everybody, welcome back to the channel. And this is part 2 of Dying Alone. And I wanted to do this in 2 parts because the first part I thought was really critical, especially when it comes to a loved one that's of yours dying alone. And today I kind of want to talk about more you because, you know, I know my book was kind of focused more on a loved one dying. And, you know, I do talk and try to speak to caregivers quite a bit, but, you know, since we do cover death and dying, it's really important to talk about our own deaths, you know, and all that. I mean, we of course cover that, but something a little bit more in depth, especially with reference to this topic. So let's continue to normalize these conversations. My name is Abigail, here to normalize conversations and education about death and dying, so we die better at end of life and hopefully live a good one till we get there. So let's get into it today. So I want to talk about a couple things in reference to our own death. You know, I've seen people say we're kind of born alone, kind of, sort of, you know, because we are in there, but we're kind of already part of our birth mother. And so we're kind of with that person when we're born. But then people also say, you know, well, we ultimately die alone because we actually do the thing where we die alone. Yeah, we do. Our body knows how to die. I've talked about this before. And yes, we end up doing the actual death thing on our own. But in my 20 plus years in this field, and I always like to say, you know, my first several years was in the hospital, mainly in ICU critical care. And the last 15 years were in hospice and palliative care. And not just as a bedside nurse, but also, even though when I did move up to the executive level and was running the hospice and palliative care companies and doing a lot of the training for physicians and other people at hospitals, I was still very much active at the bedside because I wanted to make sure I was making decisions that reflected, you know, what was happening at the bedside. Anyway, I just realized I don't have my filter on, so you're not going to see me all smooth and dainty like I usually am. It's going to be how it is. And I'm a little tired. So anyway, what I want to say, because I spent a lot of time at the bedside and because I also worked closely with staff who worked at the bedside all the time, I heard and saw the same things over and over again when people were dying. And I do talk about this in the book and also a little bit more, and I can do more videos on this, but where people who were dying were oftentimes reaching and or looking up and or talking or whispering or trying to communicate with someone that nobody else in this world could see, in the physical world could see. And it happens so much, so often, the same types of accounts. And this is when the person was really at the end of life, like really in their last day or two. You know, I know everyone, can always be a little nuanced, but the very last day or two where they were doing this, and it was in a way where they weren't completely conscious. They couldn't really communicate with their caregivers that were around them, for example, but on another level, in their own way, even though they couldn't really speak or communicate with people around them, they were reaching, they were saying somebody's name, even if it was someone they didn't really know, but saying somebody's name, smiling a little bit, and or just communicating in a way really soft, really subtle most of the time. And this made me really believe that these people were not alone when they were dying. And they didn't seem agitated. They seemed really comfortable. And sometimes what was really cool, actually just a lot of times, the person who was dying and who was trying to talk, even though they were really, really faint with how they were talking and whispering, they would use the name of a person that, you know, the family knew. It could have been a spouse, it could have been some other caregiver, it could have been some aunt, uncle, grandmother, whoever it was. And what I wanted to really tell, you know, what I told the caregivers, you know, around the bedside, or, you know, calling them if they weren't able to be there, they were across country or whatever, I would say, I hope this really gives you a lot of comfort, because you know, your aunt, your mom, your dad, whatever, it doesn't seem like they're alone. It seems like somebody that they know is there and is waiting for them, or however it is that you want to interpret this. So I learned to really be careful as to how I started to present this, because I never wanted to put my views on other people. And I look at this as different than putting my views on other people. I always speak from my experience, mostly professional and sometimes personal, because I think it's really relevant and I want it to be, you know, useful to you, because I didn't work those 20 plus years and got sick and that was it for nothing. I want something more to come out of this. I want something to come out of, you know, all of that time and work, because I put 100% in every single day. And then I got to learn so much, thankfully. So this was something that I thought was just uncanny. And then when I heard it over and over again, and it wasn't just in the IC, it wasn't just in the persons like who were at the private home. It was people who were in nursing homes who were dying. It was people in private homes who were dying, in hospitals who were dying. I saw this over and over. I think I first saw it when I was actually in the hospital, maybe in the oncology floor before I went to the ICU. And I kind of was like, oh, I don't know, maybe they're hallucinating something. And sometimes people assume that they're hallucinating, but really they're connecting in another energy realm, whatever. And I just encourage people, regardless of whatever your beliefs are, is to think about, you know, especially people who are close to us, would there be a reason for them to be there? You know, when people die that we love, we have this real issue with, you know, kind of this dissonance that they're here one day and then they're physically gone the next, right? They're physically gone. And it's really hard for our nervous systems, our brains to catch up to that, especially when someone was there and now they're gone. And this is why grief is such a complex type of experience. And then it can be more complex depending on what else is happening around it before and what kind of relationship it was before, etc. So my whole point with that is really just giving yourself an opportunity to really think about, you know, especially when someone that you loved has died. When you thought about them, did you ever talk to them after they died? You know, would you think about them and say, oh my gosh, I wish you were here? Or what would you do? I don't know what to do. You know, and kind of even in moments of desperation when we don't really know. And if you haven't, it's healthy. And I think it's really healthy to do so. You know, yes, I have my own beliefs, because I have my own experiences, things like that, you know, professionally, but also personally. I'm not, you know, really religious, but I feel very connected to those people who have died that I loved, that I love. And, also because my own personal experience, I didn't have a near-death experience. I had like a near-death adjacent kind of experience where I didn't die, but I was held underwater when I was at the beach one day, and I was little. I was like 8 or 9, and I was held under a wave, and I was so terrified because I'm like, I can't even and I just sunk down. It was in Coronado Beach, and we drove down there because it was a really nice beach, and the wave just held me down, and I was worried about breathing. And then all of a sudden, everything slowed down. It's like everything slowed down. I was at peace, and then my life flashed before my eyes. And I never understood what that was until I heard someone say, my life flashed before my eyes. And I'm like, oh, that's what happened. My life flashed before my eyes. And then in an instant, it's like something, I can't explain it. I think it's my aunt. I think she's kind of one of my guardian angels. Pushed me right back up, and I can't even explain it because I was being pushed down and I couldn't fight the wave to get back up. But then I went from panic to all of a sudden peace, watching everything just slow down. It was like moving in slow motion, but I was at peace at the same time. And my life flashed before my eyes. What's interesting with near-death experiences, another reason I bring this up is because in these experiences, countless experiences where people, even before, documentation was really good, recording was really good, they were documented accounts of people having the very similar experiences where things became really peaceful. Now, there were different things like where the light was so bright or the colors were so vibrant, they saw colors that they never knew existed. They could see, what was happening below them. Everything also slowed down, but there was a huge sense of peace. And then when they were connecting with others on the other side or who had died, there was a huge sense of love and deep love, deep peace, to the point where they didn't want to leave wherever they were. So while a near-death experience can be a little bit different for some people, because that's, can't be the same for everybody. I mean, but there's so many key components that are the same for these accounts that have happened, generally speaking. So I bring all this up to say, based on the experience I've had professionally mainly, but also personally, I can't deny that our experience of death can actually be, especially once we're dying, can be one that is more comforting and peaceful. I imagine people who have different religions, and things like that, they have a different belief as to what can happen. I'm just sharing my experience, what I witnessed and experienced. And I want to share that because I saw it for 20 plus years. My own personal experience happened when I was very young, but through the 20 plus years of my professional career, and also watching loved ones die, I saw the same things over and over again, and it's just impossible to deny. So in this spirit, I want to invite you to maybe think about this a little bit more, let it settle with you, maybe read up on these near-death experiences and see what speaks to you. Think about times that you were at the bedside or you maybe heard about a loved one of yours dying and maybe they did something similar like this. Does it resonate with you? This whole thing with death can be really fearful, and then especially dying alone can seem really fearful. And, I know people don't always want to think about it, and talking about it doesn't guarantee that it's going to happen to you right now. I know we're naturally afraid of talking about death and experiencing it, which is, I always want to remind us, is very healthy. You're really healthy if you fear death, because our bodies are programmed biologically to avoid it because we're programmed for survival. So it's totally normal, totally healthy to fear death. But we can we can assuage, we can kind of calm this fear a little bit. I'm not saying 100% because I don't think that's realistic. To make it, an anticipated better experience, plan it better, and have it be a better experience overall. What I personally think is going to happen is, when we die, I'll just speak for myself. When I die, even if it's like all of a sudden in a crash or something and my body is whatever, has some trauma, just crazy amount, it's going to happen. Maybe I'll feel some pain at some point. But I really believe that, and I might feel a sense of fear all of a sudden. I mean, at that point, when you do have such a serious type of accident, you have endorphins rushing. So endorphins also are part of the death process. It helps you with the feelings of euphoria, curbing hunger and thirst, really also giving some calm. So there's all of that in addition to whatever else is going on. So we can plan for these deaths, but also death can happen all of a sudden. But it's important for us to plan because when it does happen, we have something to fall back on in terms of what's important to us, and people around us know what's important to us. Anyway, then I think it's going to happen, and it's going to be like, okay, this is okay. We're fine. I'm fine. I'm good. I think it's going to be one of those things where, yeah, I'm a little scared of it. Maybe sometimes really scared of it, which again is healthy. Even though I've seen a lot of really good deaths, I know my body's afraid of it. But then it's going to happen. It's going to be okay. The whole after you die is an interesting question because a lot of that is tied to religious beliefs, and how you lived your life and all that kind of stuff. And that is a huge subject. one that I will probably address in another video, because I've had people ask me, what happens after we die? So anyway, we will get to that. I'll do that in another, maybe we'll do a part 3 for this. But this was strictly about dying alone, and how I witnessed over and over again how it seemed like people didn't really die alone, and that they were comforted in some way. And for even people who maybe don't know a lot of people, I truly believe that somewhere in your lineage or lifetime, or whoever was around you, who was a big influence, who was a person that maybe loved you or cared about you to whatever degree, those people who have died can show up to make sure that you're not alone in this process. So I guess we'll know for sure when it actually happens, and we can talk. How about we do that? Let's make sure we meet up and talk. Anyway, leave your comments. Leave your thoughts. Does this resonate with you? Do you have questions? Anything else you want me to cover specifically to this? I think I have a part 3 coming up, because I think we got more, or another part kind of to extend this. Anyway, let's continue to normalize these conversations and education about death and dying, so we die a better end of life, and hopefully live a really good one until we get there. I'm Abigail. I will talk to you soon. Yeah, I know things are crazy, but please take care of yourself. Okay, bye-bye.